Moving into our second story of the day, we got James Rosen, and hopefully I'm saying his name right, folks. He's a big contender here in terms of being one of the top guys in that White House press briefing room for us. Questions John Kirby on the Ukrainian fight there against the Russians. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and roll it.
James Rosen. Thank you, Kareem. And Admiral, two questions. First, on Ukraine. When the American people hear you say, and they hear the president say, that the United States will support Ukraine in this conflict as long as it takes, and we further hear you and the president say that the decision-making as to how long the conflict goes on, when negotiations will be entertained, are all left up to President Zelensky, why shouldn't the American people conclude that critical decision-making about our national security, our taxpayer resources, our military, are in fact being outsourced or utterly given over to a foreign leader instead of being made by our president?
Great question.
These decisions are being made by certainly the commander-in-chief, but with full support from not only both houses of Congress, but both parties up on Capitol Hill. There's been tremendous support for that. And I think the American people are smart enough to realize that that if we just walk away from this and we just let Putin take Ukraine, which, by the way, James, he hasn't given up on as a strategic goal, then what's next? And if you think the cost in blood and treasure right now is high, think about how much exorbitantly higher it would be if, in fact, we just simply, all of us, walk away from this. Because it's not just the president that says as long as it takes. Every G7 leader repeated that same phrase in Hiroshima. We all want to see this war end. And we'd love to see it end right now. And as you've heard me say a gazillion times, it could end right now if Mr. Putin would do the right thing and pull his troops out. But short of that, and he's shown no indication of being willing to do that, we got to make sure that Ukraine can continue to succeed on the battlefield so that if and when it comes time to talks, President Zelensky can do that with the wind at his back. Nobody, except maybe Mr. Putin, wants to see this war continue. You think the Ukrainian people want it to go on for one more day after all the suffering that they've gone through? But we can't just walk away from this. And the American people, I think, understand that.
James Rosen is going to continue here in one moment, but I do have a question for the comment section because I love your guys' feedback and to see where your perspective is in a lot of these things and see if it kind of matches up with myself. Do you think that we should pull out of Ukraine? And what I mean by pull out, meaning remove our weaponry or stop kind of giving, I guess, quote unquote, donations or military aid to them. Do you think that should happen? And if so, what do you think the consequences are going to be of that? Do you think the Russians would obviously ultimately take over Ukraine? And then do you think they would go on a step further than that of kind of going into maybe allied territory and potentially starting a World War III? Would love to hear from you in the comment section below. We're going to continue here with James Rosen.
The other subject, if I might. I want to return to a colloquy that you and I had on one of your Zoom briefings. And I know everyone in this room is very grateful that you conduct those Zoom briefings. What's puzzling to me, and I suspect others, is that those briefings are not transcribed and the transcripts are not disseminated. And they're on the record. So if I could just use this opportunity first to register mild protest that we should receive transcripts of those briefings. We're not currently. Secondly, the colloquy you and I had was about whether China and Russia, or either one, should be considered an evil regime. President Reagan described the Soviet Union as the locus of evil in the modern world. George W. Bush referred to an axis of evil after 9/11. If you have governments that are running concentration camps or launching unprovoked wars where hundreds of thousands of people are being killed and the President of the United States calls the leader of that regime a war criminal, I don't see what it is that prohibits you from calling a spade and saying these are evil regimes, which you refused to do in our earlier colloquy.
Well, I appreciate your advice on policy, and I'll take that back, James. But president's never been one. The president, no.
Why don't you consider these evil regimes?
It's not a simple question, James.
It's
a criticism that you're posing as a question. You'd like to see us put a label on these two countries, and President Biden just doesn't conduct foreign policy that way. I think go look at the national security strategy, go look at the national defense strategy, take a look at anything that the president has said over his time as commander-in-chief about Russia and China, and you'll see that we are speaking pretty plainly to the American people and to those countries and those leaders about how we view these their behavior, their conduct on the world stage, and our relationships with them. We've been very, very honest about that.
Hey, great questions coming out from all reporters today. I mean, there's kind of, again, a variety of questions that are being offered. A lot of what we're seeing today is on Ukraine, but just during that hour-long press briefing, there was a lot of questions that were being presented, again, on a variety of topics. One thing I find interesting here is the idea of how different Biden is compared to Trump and the pushback that Trump got for labeling people, like James Rosen is talking about, whereas Biden is not doing it, and now we're getting questions, well, why isn't he doing that? So I just find that dynamic interesting. I'm curious if you find that dynamic interesting, where Trump got pushback for labeling certain countries certain things, like North Korea being Rocket Man, compared to, China is literally doing evil things, has been doing evil things for quite some time. There's countries that say and do evil things like Iran, death to America all the time, want to blow Western civilization off the face of the earth. Why can't we call a spade a spade? I think it's a great question, but it's a question for all of you in the comment section below. Let us know. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.